All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank y'all for your diligence. Has been trying to wait for a few more folks to come, and maybe they'll come on in shortly. This is the House Regulated Industries Committee, and we are also the statutory committee that is the Lottery Oversight Committee. We started a couple of years ago trying to have these meetings on a more regular basis. So we've at least got it every 2 years instead of a 25-year hiatus in between. And that being said, I'm going to introduce Gretchen Corbin, and she is the president of the lottery. And she may want to introduce her newest legislative, is that her title?
So Haley, anything that y'all need, Haley Allison has it. And she's H. Allison.
For the members of the committee, if you remember Mr. Brad Bohannon, who was there for many years, he has moved to the governor's staff. And so now we have a new face to look at. And thank you so much. I look forward to working with you. All right. We're going to turn it over to you, and you can make a presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's pretty exciting to be here with you today. I'm going to go through my presentation, but I think the most important thing to say is we are over 300 million over where we were this time last year. This has been the largest year in the lottery's history. And so it's a really exciting year to present to this committee. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the invitation to be here today. And thank you and all members of the committee for your service to the state and for your support of the Georgia Lottery throughout the year. On behalf of Governor Kemp, the Georgia Lottery Corporation Board of Directors, our entire team, our educational partners, and most importantly, the Hope and pre-K students that the Georgia Lottery benefits, it's great to always be with you and to provide this fiscal year 21 update. As you know best, our mission is to maximize revenues for Hope and pre-K responsibly. Everything we do begins and ends with sending money your way for the students in mind. As mentioned, Haley Allison is with us today. Also, Mr. James Session, who is our VP of Financial Services, is with us. James, you've been with the lottery for how many years? 8 years. 8 years. And it comes from Coca-Cola and Lockheed Martin, and is just a superstar in our financial group. And so he is the gentleman, he and the senior VP of finance are really the ones that are crunching the numbers and getting to those month-end close and those quarter-end close. So we're glad to have you here today, James. Well, again, this is the most important slide that I will show today. I'll show it in the beginning and the end, just in case, to make sure that we don't miss it. Fiscal year 21, $1.544 billion raised for education, 307.7 million, or a 24.9% increase year over year, bringing the total, hey guys, bringing the total raise to $23.8 billion for education since inception. Mr. Chairman, you were here when we all started the Georgia, or when you started the Georgia Lottery, you and your colleagues. Anyone else on this committee, may I ask?
So Gretchen, did I understand that you said this year it was 1.554 billion?
No, sir. 1.544 billion.
That's pretty good in cotton country.
It is. So $307.7 million ahead of last year. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I guess that means tuition will go up dramatically.
Maybe that's what I'm just here to speak on the lottery numbers, Mr. Chairman. Well, as you know, we love to show this slide, and I really like it because it really takes us from 1994, when we truly began providing our returns into Georgia, and where we are going this year, or where we continue to go. And pretty much our trend, obviously, is upward. In 1994, we started with returns of $375 million, which was a great first year. And now we've grown to 1.54 billion this past fiscal year. This is the largest growth that we have ever seen from 20 to 21. Again, a 24.9% year over year. Our U.S. I'm just going to go back and just, I think this is somewhere later in the script, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. We recognize that this year has been a year like no other. But I have to be really appreciative of all of you for your support, Mr. Chairman. I called you many a time when we were working remotely to say, these are the updates. And the year looked great as a whole, but I remember there was a week or two where I was a little panicked. And I want to thank you for your support during that time period, during the good times and the bad times. Through all this year of increased demand, our team worked remotely in the office, but also remotely in some instances. They were calling on their retailers from their homes in some instances. Our retailers made our sales possible. I give thanks to our vendors from Scientific Games, making sure that we were providing more product when it was demanded by our players. UPS and making sure that it got to our retailers, of course, selling. I really kind of looked to two things, and that was, of course, Georgia had the ability to be open a little more than other states. And so we're very thankful for that because our retailers were able to sell to our customers. The second part was our iLottery platform, which I'll get to a little bit. And I will tell you that we've always said in Georgia, the way you set us up, Mr. Chairman, and your colleagues, Governor Miller and everyone that has come behind y'all and making sure that this lottery was the same. We've been entrepreneurial in nature, which allowed for us to have an iLottery platform. And we thought that we were working, it was the right thing to do, right? In regards to the next generation and making sure that they could work with their telephones or work on their computer to purchase product if they would like to. We wanted to be where the customer was. Well, I have to tell you, on March 13th, we were doing it because it was the right thing. But on March 13th, March 20th, I can't tell you the amount of lottery presidents that called me, said, how did y'all do that in Georgia? We were one of 6 states in the United States that had an iLottery platform when we went into the pandemic. So obviously the ability for our players to purchase at retail and our players to purchase online kept our ability to sell and our proceeds coming. And so a big thanks to all of you, because during those years of the iLottery ramping up, Mr. Chairman, the past 6 years, you've always been supportive of that. So I want to thank you for that. Having the ability to step back, we know that the Georgia Lottery is doing incredible things. We know our returns, we know the number of students that we'll go through, but what we really get excited about is to be able to step back and see, how are we doing in the United States? How are we doing in the world? I can tell you that when I go anywhere, everyone asks, how does the Georgia Lottery do it? Or how can we do it like the Georgia Lottery? You're set up so very well. You're one of the top lotteries. And what we really look to is the per capita sales. In the United States ranking, we are number 2 in total per capita sales of any state and jurisdiction. So out of 46 jurisdictions, we're number 2. I think even more impressive is our world ranking. We're number 4 out of approximately 200 lotteries around the world. And when we're talking about against other lotteries, we're talking about world lotteries. And so it's just really exciting to be able to look back and realize, we know the Georgia Lottery is great when you're living it, but when you step back and look from a world view, we've done an incredible job. And so I want to congratulate everyone in this room and everyone who has made the Georgia Lottery what it is over these last 28 years. So we always like to show also, where does the money go in a given year? Where's the Georgia Lottery, the dollar, how's it breaking down? And you'll see the numbers here on this peach, but kind of to give a breakdown of percentages, prizes are 63.9% of the Georgia Lottery dollar, which makes sense. That's our product, right? So that's 63.9%. Education, of course, is our beneficiary, is every other dollar that we can provide, which is 26.6%. Retailers, as you know, statutorily earn a 6% commission. I think over about 80% of these businesses are small businesses. They're in your communities. And just this year, they made over $342 million. They worked incredibly hard, and we will forever be grateful for their work over this year. Our vendors are always come in at around 2%. These are companies like Scientific Games who work hard with us in regards to developing and getting our product out. IGT, who works on our gaming platform for our draw games, as well as our iLottery product. Our operating expenses are 1.6% of the Georgia Lottery dollar. And if you were to take out the great advertising, I hope you like it on television that you see. Sometimes it's funny. I hope it's always funny to you. If you were to take out the advertising and the promotions that we do, the Georgia Lottery would be, our operational expense would always be lower than 1%. So I get really excited about 96 cents of a Georgia Lottery being invested back into your communities, into the citizens of Georgia in the form of education, retailer commissions, and prizes. And I have to tell you, as an economic developer at heart, when I look at every dollar invested back, I asked my team, I was like, okay, we're in here 28 years. Go back and tell me how much the Georgia Lottery, what's been the economic impact, just our impact, not the spinoff impact. And when you look at it, and again, having been an economic developer, just like all of you are as legislators in your communities, you know, Casey, if we get $1 million investment in Dalton, or we get a $100,000 capital investment, or if we get a huge $1 or $2 billion investment, Mr. Chairman, you know, we're looking at that probably over 20 years and we celebrate it. It's a big deal. And so my question was, how much has the Georgia Lottery in the almost 30 years provided back to Georgia? $85 billion. So $85 billion has gone back into a Georgia community, again, in the area of education, prizes, retailer commissions, and we're very, very proud of that. And just, again, a very quick number, every day your Georgia Lottery raises approximately $4.2 million for Hope and Pre-K. This is recent returns in regards to traditional lottery and COAM, which we're very proud to partner with and to regulate. So you can see how traditional lottery has grown since we have started regulating COAM in 2014, as well as you can see the COAM growth as well during this time period. Product development. The product, when we highlight our success during fiscal year 21, again, a year like no other. And at our operation, I cannot tell you the new product development that was going on to make sure that we had larger numbers of tickets when necessary, but also that we had the games on the draw side that our players wanted. So you probably saw that we increased Powerball from 2 to 3 days and started with a Monday evening Powerball draw. Cash 3 and Cash 4 are now on our apps. We wanted to take about 6 years on our Georgia Lottery app to make sure that we were very confident that it would not hurt a retailer, that it would only assist a retailer. And so we've now put Cash 3 and Cash 4 on our iLottery product, and we're seeing growth again in both retail and iLottery. And then, of course, all the different promotions. Cash Pop is a brand new game, a little easier. You only have to choose one game. And so if you're looking for an entry player or a younger player, we're doing that is, again, a game that is at retail, but is also online. And so the object there is to get the younger group excited. I want to stay on Cash Pop because Cash Pop sales, which was just one draw game, our team worked really hard on it. But having created that in 2020, our Cash Pop sales were now over $101 million, providing approximately $28 million in profit since just January 2020. And then quickly on some marketing promotions, you've probably seen Money Mondays for Powerball, Dick Clark's New Year's Rocking Eve, where 5 Georgia Lottery winners are going to appear live with Dick Clark's New Year's Rocking Eve out of New York. Our Falcons Superfan Season seat promotion. This is really cool. The Falcons wanted to make sure that they could bring new players into their arena, and we saw the opportunity to partner with the Falcons to do a promotion so that we could connect with those players and they could become Georgia Lottery players. We awarded 50 winners with a pair of season tickets to the new Dirty Bird Nest section at all Falcons home games. Fantastic. Have you enjoyed it? Yeah. And then again, this is our lottery over the 28 years. With inclusion of our Q1 from fiscal year 22, we have now transferred more than $24.2 billion to education. And those dollars have resulted in more than 2 million Hope Scholars, which Georgia Student Finance celebrated in September. So 2 million going into this college year of Hope Scholars, and more than 1.6 million pre-K students. In fiscal year 21, more than 180,000 Georgia students received Hope, which was an increase over 8,000 students in fiscal year 20. And then again, the milestone of 2 million students served by Georgia's Hope program. I just want to remind you that it consists of 6 different Hope programs. Y'all know I was the former technical college system commissioner, so I get really, my heart goes out when we start talking about this. We hear a lot about the Hope Scholarship, the Zell Miller Scholarship that takes place at the university systems. Very thankful for that, very proud to fund that. But just a quick reminder that the Hope program also includes the Zell Miller Grant, the Hope Career Grant, the Hope Grant, and the Hope GED Grant that can be accessed at every technical college around the state. So we really have education covered on the higher education side. And again, lottery funds over 84,000 slots for pre-K students every year. You know, we hear incredible stories every day, and I'll just share this one with you. You can do this too when you go into your civic, in your civic clubs, and you probably already have. But whenever I go into a civic organization, you can imagine I ask the question, okay, who was a Hope or a pre-K recipient? And just last week, I was in Walton County. I was in Monroe, and this was the exciting part. I was at their Chamber of Commerce luncheon. And so I asked the question, all business leaders, and I would gather, Mr. Chairman, between 75 to 80 people in the room and ask the question. And usually we touch about 75% of the room. Ask the question, who's a Hope Scholar or a pre-K student? Hands went up, and I would say anywhere from 50 to 65% of the people in the room had been Hope or pre-K recipients. And then I followed with the question, well, who's a parent? And then I followed, how about an employer? And Jason, once I did that, the full room, all hands were up. In a business luncheon, and I thought to myself, Mr. Chairman, your vision, Governor Miller's vision, all the commitment of the legislators and the governor since then, it's worked. It's worked. We are now fueling the business economy of the state of Georgia and the economic development of the communities. And so we celebrate those achievements with you, and we are thrilled to provide this information to you today. As I mentioned, I said I would begin with this slide and I would end with this slide, because if you can only remember 3 pieces or only want to take one piece back with you to your friends, family, and constituents, it's our fiscal year 21 results. $1.5 billion for education this year, $307.7 million, or a 24.9% increase year over year. And again, now a total of $23.8 billion that has been provided to education since inception. Mr. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity to present today. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Gretchen, and quite impressive. Thank y'all for the great job y'all are doing.
Thank you.
Number 18, that would be
okay,
Mr. Mitchell, no doubt.
yes. President Corbin, it was impressive, the numbers here. What's the algorithm you use to measure our national and international rankings? And do the other states use the same measurement instrument?
Good question.
What goes into that?
Absolutely. So we actually all send our information to LaFleur's, which is an independent association it's an independent lottery association. Everyone sends their information to them and they update those yearly.
And the criteria is what do they measure? Just how much you sell?
Yes.
Or, I see.
Sales, and obviously your population in regards to the per capita sales.
All right. Now, my main question is, do we see, your forecasters see that there's a ceiling on how successful I would assume, and maybe because I'm not a real gambler, but I would assume that there must be a point whereas the returns will start to diminish. I can't presume that people will continue to gamble more and more and more, buy lottery tickets more and more, particularly as we contemplate other ways that people can games of chance or destination resorts or online betting. Do we see that there's maybe a diminishing return, or can we forecast that if
It's tough, isn't it?
Yes, it's a tough issue, as we contemplate other devices for where consumers can bet and the like. Do we see it hurting the lottery, a diminishing return, or do you think that we can forever on get these kind of numbers as we add other devices for people to be engaged?
I think that's a good question. You almost have to wait and see, right? Because we recognize that we are a discretionary dollar. And so we feel that this year, our sales were probably close. My guess is you could put ourselves close to Home Depot and we would look pretty similar. We were a discretionary dollar that brought a lot of entertainment during a time where you didn't have the ability to travel outside. And so that was one of the great reasons for this last year's success. There might be, if there were a different form of gaming, there could possibly be an impact, but maybe not. I think that that's something that we would have to live through almost to see. James, do you have a perspective on that you would like to share?
Only that we do recognize that this past year was an extraordinary year. It would be very difficult to duplicate. But we look back at prior years, and a lot of it is just the innovation that you continue to bring. Well, as long as the state continues to grow, we feel like the business will continue to grow, possibly at a diminishing amount. But we do think that there's no reason why we can't continue to grow. Again, as long as the state does. That's kind of the baseline, and that's been good for the last 10 years, obviously.
Mm-hmm. I guess, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I guess essentially, I mean, if we were to add destination resorts and online betting, and I'm hearing horse racing and other devices, do you think that model will still suggest that the lottery will be able to make the kind of profits and deliver the kinds of resources to education as they have been?
Having not studied it, I don't know, Mr. Representative, I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't answer because a lot depends on what particular gaming activity is.
Mm-hmm.
Do recall that we do get a significant amount of business from travel through the state, being in a unique position of having interstates that go coast to coast that most travel through Atlanta. So we do get a lot of travel business as well. That probably wouldn't change because they're not stopping, for example, at a destination. They're traveling through Georgia to somewhere else, but they're taking advantage of the opportunity as well as at the airport.
And lastly, Mr. Chairman, how would you like to be the manager of the proceeds that come from horse racing and online betting and those others?
I don't have an opinion on that, Mr. Representative Mitchell. I love being the president of the Georgia Lottery, and I do whatever fits the statute at the moment, and so I'm proud to do that.
Okay. Good, Mr. Chairman.
I know you are. Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. So what state's number one? I always like to know who's in front of us, right?
And for per cap, for instant, I would think probably Massachusetts.
Yeah, it is Massachusetts. Thank you.
Massachusetts. Worldwide, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I got you. Yeah.
It is Massachusetts. It's Massachusetts. We don't want to be number one.
We don't want to be number one?
No, because if you get to a certain point, you are providing so much out in prizes that you don't have as much revenue to provide back to the state of Georgia.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So their margins are better. They pay out a little bit more, so they got more players kind of deal. I got you.
Interesting. Spin it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and happy birthday once again. President Corbin, quick question. Are you able, not you, but is the lottery able to discern what percentage of the increase is to the increase of diversity in the games versus the number of players? Are you able to tell where the breakdown and increase is coming from?
No, we can't. We don't have that type of information about individual players. We can tell how different games perform, but not specifically to a player.
May I follow up, sir?
Certainly.
Just for clarification, the percentage of players, are the percentages of players increasing in Georgia to correlate with the increase in games?
That's what I'm saying. We don't have that information to be able to say.
Thank you.
Plug him in. Representative Jackson, you're online.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Have at
Can you
it.
hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Corbin, quick two questions, actually. My first question is, do you have the data to show those Georgia-centric games versus the multi-state games, like the, separate out, the Powerball and Mega Million on one side, and then all the, scratch offs for the Atlanta Falcons and all that on the other side? Do you have that data?
We do, yes, sir.
The reason why I'm asking, because it would be great, and this is really to follow up on my good friend, Representative Mitchell, as we are considering other adult entertainment type, like destination resorts and horse betting and sports betting and online betting. It would be great for us to see what that data looks like for Georgian-centric games. And so that way we, as the chairman stated earlier, we're about oversight. So that way we don't have some unintended consequences. That's one. And then number two, that number will also help us to discern, how many Georgians are using your gambling help center services too. If you had that data, how many Georgians are calling up your 1-800 number, I need help because I'm about to gamble my last dollar.
We can absolutely follow up with that information. A quick reminder that the Department of Behavioral Health actually runs that line, but we can obviously work with them to get those numbers, and we can absolutely very quickly provide you with that first set of data that you asked for.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, because as a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, if I could. So President Corbin, the reason why I'm asking that, because as we considering all these other things that may very well come to Georgia, I think we need the data to show where we are right now, what that baseline looks like. Those Georgians who are, calling up to say that we need help and we need to make sure that those services are available. And much like how you shared the story with us this afternoon about how well we're doing in contributing towards education and year-over-year dollars, it would definitely help us to learn, what services that you all are providing to help those Georgians who are reaching out for that help.
Thank you. And thank you for that prompt. We're going to send you that follow-up. A quick note of an item that I did not include, Mr. Chairman, is in regards to our responsible gaming component. we have an entire group within our legislative affairs that works just on responsible gaming. And Georgia's at some of those highest levels, and we'll look forward to sharing that with you also, Mr. Representative.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the committee members? Mr. Jaspers.
Okay, thanks.
So good to have you here.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to be here, birthday boy. Just Chair, President Corbett, I guess my question is more actuarial because, I looked at that slide that you showed a moment ago, on the per year growth of lottery sales. Of course, looking at the 2021 spike due to the stimulus dollars that everybody got, they really jacked it up. So what's happened after that?
It's a very good question.
I mean, is it tailed down just a little bit because those $600 checks, $1,200 are not in there? It seems logical that it would in the last 6 months. What's going on with that?
Well, and whether it's that or individuals have the opportunity to travel, spend their discretionary dollar somewhere else, we have seen a little bit of a decrease. And James, if you would talk about that, surprisingly, probably not as large of a decrease as I actually would have expected at this point in time. In regards to our budget, when we budgeted from the Georgia Lottery, you can imagine that we prepared for that and providing that information to OPB. And at this point in time, we are, I'll let James share, but we have met our budget and continue to do so at this point in time. James?
Sir, keep speaking to the mic too, please. Pick it up at once.
Sure. In terms of how we performed over the last 6 months and sort of the comparison within the pandemic, we've been looking at recent sales against actually the previous fiscal year, which we consider to be a little bit more normal year to have some idea. And what we're finding is we're trending about halfway between what we did 2 years ago and what we did last year. So we are trending probably slightly ahead of where we would have been had last year been just a non-pandemic normal year. So we feel good about that part. In terms of this year, we built our budget based on kind of where we anticipated we should have been in fiscal year 22. And so far, over the first 4 months, we have met our budget each month. So that trend is certainly good, and we're beginning to move into which should be our busier times of the year. So we feel good that we survived what is usually a little bit slower quarter in Q1 to move toward the next two quarters.
Okay, thank you. I know the chairman and I shared the same idea that the Board of Regents was probably looking at that with great anticipation that it would stay way up there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further question?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Real quick, you just sparked my interest a little bit. So when you're budgeting, do you do kind of a straight line budget? So let's say it's $1 billion. Do you do $1 billion divided by 12, or do you budget in that seasonality?
No, actually, what we use is our trend over the last 5 years of how sales have trended month over month. Then we look at what we anticipate our overall growth to be, the overall total, and spread it accordingly. So for the slow months, we budget accordingly. For what have traditionally been better months, we budget accordingly as well. So for these next few months, the expectations for sales are also higher than they've been for the first quarter. So we do have a challenge.
Mr. Ridley.
Yes, sir. I kind of piggyback off Representative Carpenter's question. With the current administration that we've gotten, a great job that they've done, being sarcastic and saying that. We know that there's a big recession coming. How do you try to prepare for yourself for that?
Great question. Traditionally, what we found is, like I said, I've been there 8 years. I've taken a look at how the lottery has performed over the last 20 years. We have basically had year-over-year growth every year but two over the lottery's history. Both of those years were years of significant recession. It wasn't just downtime. It was really bad. So my experience from other places is that I won't say the lottery is recession proof. I don't think anything is recession proof. But we do find that people sort of hang on to some things a little bit longer during a recession. And the hope is, and I think some of it may be psychological, that you play because you hope to win to make that extra money that you don't have. So
Get you out of that recession.
so to get you out, and that may or may not be a great approach, but I think that that probably happens, realistically.
Good.
So,
Thank you.
Questions from the committee? I'm interested in the helpline. I don't play the lottery very often. I usually wait until it hits to the top of the rankings when it's the worst possible odds. I need help. I'd like to win where I can get out of here. But any questions from any of the committee members? I'd like to ask a couple of questions. It wouldn't be me if I didn't have to ask this, but fastest growing segment of y'all's revenues are the COAM division.
probably the second fastest.
What would be the first?
Actually, the first is probably,
Sure.
I'm sorry. The first is our interactive business, the digital gaming, the ability to play on cell phones, mobile phones, and laptops and iPads. COAM certainly has grown. It's become more mature over the last couple years. I think smaller numbers, larger percentages the first few years. Here lately, a little bit more mature growth, but the largest segment is probably the interactive,
So interactive, if I understood from the numbers that I was sent, the COAM receipts to the lottery went from 91 million plus 10 in admin fees year before last to 140. How much last year?
About 145 million last year, which was pretty consistent with what we saw on the sales side. Conversely, interactive sales in that same period went from roughly 142 million to 309 million.
So it was a 50-something $million increase off the COAM receipts last year.
And about 170, close to 170 million on the interactive side. Certainly, both that we want to pursue. They both.
Well, could you take a minute to explain the interactive side? I'm really not that familiar because I don't play games on the phone. I'd like to know about it. If that's bringing in that much, we need to know a little bit about that.
Basically, and the pandemic kind of brought this out. The younger generation tends to be cashless type mentality, a quick play mentality. Everything is on their phones. They are constantly, anything like my kids, they're constantly on the phone. As we begin to see our current population age, you need to come up with a way to approach this younger demographic to basically create a new market, a new lottery market. That was the impetus behind iLottery, the whole iLottery idea. We were able to grow it, but then we found the pandemic accelerated what this younger demographic did. People started buying online. Places stopped taking cash because they couldn't make change. Things became cashless. Everything was by phone because you didn't want to touch things. So it kind of fell into our lap, so to speak. But we also found that people, for the same reason they continue to purchase online and buy online today, even though the pandemic is not nearly as bad as it was, they like the convenience of play, and particularly young people learned about our products. So what we've done is, as Gretchen mentioned, we added our two largest local games, Cash 3 and Cash 4, to add those on. to the ability to play mobile. Going forward, any new draw game will be able to play mobile. So now you're opening up access to all our games and visibility to all our games to people who go to the gas station and pay at the pump and never come inside. You never come inside. A year ago, you couldn't play Cash 3. You couldn't play Cash 4. Now they don't have to, but when they come out there to play the games that they do play, they get introduced to Cash 3. They get introduced to Cash 4. Cash Pop was an easy way, an easy game to introduce them, an easy game to play, an easy game to learn from. Games that we have planned in the coming years are very similar to that. So it's the whole interactive channel is taking advantage of the way the world is beginning to shape, the way the world is beginning to look, especially how the younger generation purchases and how they approach things. Because at some point, if you don't bring them along as new lottery players, then the long term will be problematic. So that's strategically, that was our goal. That's what's behind interactive. And right around the pandemic, kind of accelerated the process, accelerated the awareness for us, and that has now waned.
And I'll just say, Mr. Chairman, the other thing that excites people about iLottery, you can imagine, is when there is a high jackpot. That's where we see a lot of new interest, because you may be sitting at a meeting and you were like, I haven't gotten a mega ticket, it's at 600 millions. And someone will remind you, or you can download the GA Lottery app, you can buy it there and you're good to go. And we find that there are the newest players come along at high jackpot times, and then we're able to retain some of those. And I'll just say, Mr. Chairman, if you want to, you can buy online, and you can buy for mega for the next 22 draws if you would like.
Are you throwing that as chum in the water to me?
Convenient, sir.
Thank you. If you buy this online, if you do this online app, though, merchants don't get the 6 cents, do they?
Correct. So we've been very careful over the last 6 years. That's why we were so slow in kind of pulling out the iLottery piece. We wanted to make sure that it only helped in cross promotions with retailers and it did not hurt them. And so we have not seen any decline in retailers during this time period. We think that we actually have a better opportunity to cross promote through advertisement for both.
Good. I'd like to ask a question. The lottery has had such a phenomenal run in Georgia. As a matter of fact, I remember 20, 30 years ago that the projections at that time were that we'd keep climbing until it started leveling and then taking a drop. And it hadn't done it, obviously. Mm-hmm. But we had set up the lottery over, the shortfall reserve fund. And I'm trying to remember now, it's been so many years, that wasn't set up under y'all, it was set up under the Student Finance Commission. Is that correct? The shortfall account?
Actually, I believe I apologize, I don't even know the answer. It's definitely not under us. And I believe OPB does that. And if not, Georgia Student Finance. I can get that answer, but I believe it's OPB.
Yeah, I'd like to know for the committee, because I remember that when we hit the staggering amount, and I mean in short order, like the first 3 years, we had put the shortfall reserve fund on for the expectations of a deal, the same way we do the shortfall reserve for the state budget.
Yes, sir.
And it was just such a phenomenal success at that time that we packed the shortfall up in like 3 years' time. And that was when, at that time in the second term, Governor Miller acquiesced to the universities to change the formulary. And of course, we've been chasing ever since to be sure that y'all have been chasing ever since to be sure the numbers stay up. But I'd like to know if you could find out for us, Madam President, about this shortfall. I'd like to find out about the shortfall account and to see how much money is actually in that shortfall now.
We'll ask for it.
I think that'd be interesting to the committee to find that out.
We'll connect. I will tell you, as your president, on March 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and 20th, I've never been so thankful for the way that you had structured the lottery, because there were a couple of days where our sales looked like everyone else in Georgia. And I was wondering thank goodness that the legislature had such great foresight to provide for this reserve in case it was ever needed, because I saw that moment in time that I thought that it might. That doesn't answer your question. I'll connect with OPB and get that to you. But I want to, from my little seat, I just want to say thank you for y'all's wisdom.
Well, I appreciate that, but I can tell you there were some pretty wizened minds at the time, even a lot of them who didn't vote for the lottery, that chimed in on some things. And that shortfall reserve fund, we understood then the same thing we know now about a lot of government projects, that once they're instituted, it's almost like they become an entitlement. And the lottery has become almost like an entitlement. It was sold to parents that if your children do so good in school, then they can get these benefits. Well, then at any possibility, if it took a dip, then they feel like they've been shunned. So they want to keep it up. And that was where the shortfall reserve fund came into play, that it could fill it up and to maintain our obligations under the HOPE and the pre-K and stuff like that until it could be to go forward to the next step. So, questions from any of the committee members? My goodness, we do.
I guess I have one, just a curiosity question. You know, you mentioned it just a moment ago. What's in store? I mean, you know, we look at changes in the environment you described so well that we're living with now, but what are we looking at in the future for the Georgia Lottery? And what plans are y'all making? Other opportunities are out there?
Well, I think that we are looking to see what our player wants, right? And we know, again, if we were to have that pie, 70% of our players are still, scratchers is still their big interest. We know that the remaining is draw. And then again, we have our iLottery of both of those. And so I think it is making sure that we continue to do what we can do best, whether it's produce the product of a new and upcoming scratcher or promotion, whether it's meeting people where they are. It's just every day looking down that road. I will say during the pandemic, I enhanced the iLottery program. We had it planned for 2 years. And so it just happened to occur. And so that will provide us, again, that opportunity to cross promote retail and iLottery. James, did I miss anything?
Just the only other thing is we're always looking at new games, new types of draw games in particular. Scratcher games happen routinely. Draw games take a little bit more time. We've got a couple that we're looking at. Several things have happened over the last couple of years, so it kind of keeps getting pushed down, but we haven't really needed new games because everything else is gone well. But we know that that's not going to just continue to happen on its own. So we are looking at new games that some we've observed in other states that have been successful. Some are derivations on what we've seen be successful in the state of Georgia. Some things are based on information we've gotten back from players, particularly younger players. So I liken it to the Wizard of Oz. As you pull back the curtain and you see this man that's pulling all these levers, and very much that's what it is. There's no kind of huge home run item that's sitting out there. It's lots of little incremental ideas, incremental games, incremental steps that you try to put together to succeed a little bit more each year. And up to now, we've been successful at doing that. And so we'll continue that formula.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the committee? Well, I want to thank you, and I'm not going to get in. I had some other questions, but then I realized as I was sitting there, this may not be the time or place to talk about pending litigation. I mean, legislation, and litigation could probably be a better term. As you know, House Bill 544 that we did last year about changes into some of the structure. And I presume y'all are still okay with those things that we agreed to last year and leaving some of the stuff that we took out to try to move forward with that.
Well, I would want, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to look at it again. We've done a lot of work, as you know, on the gift card pilot this year, and have lots of information to provide you. I think that we've done a good job in working with the industry to kind of see what, how they want to move forward. And I know that they're working with you even more, I assume that they're going to work with you and your colleagues even more than me on those pieces. But I think that, we can be in touch, but yes, sir.
Yeah.
I think that there was
for the benefit of the committee, what she's saying is we have a slight disagreement into some of the work that's been done. And I guess that's an understatement on the gift card. The whole idea of the gift card was to create a gift card to stop any cash payouts, the number one nemesis of the COAM machines. And they've had some concerns, and there's been a non-scientific study done. And I think that's the easiest way to say it, according to the folks at the advisory board. But anyway, this isn't the place to speak. We'll be talking about that part. That bill had two parts to it last year. Y'all might remember we passed it out of the House. First part was the administrative part of that, to create parity and some straightforwardness to the people, to the mechanics, hearing process, Administrative Procedures Act, and things like that. And the other part to it was a gift card. And so we'll be discussing that a little bit later, but didn't want to get into the weeds on that because we could be here for the rest of the afternoon. And since this is the start of a day or two off until we come back Monday, these good folks don't want to stay here all day.
We appreciate your time, Mr. Chairman,
and
especially your birthday.
That. I would like to see if you Mike could provide some information to me on that would go in, that would help me on this bill that we're doing. And that would be the infractions of COAM operators, retailers, masters and such, and the remediation to that.
Okay.
So that we could do some tracking to see, and that would be helpful if you could provide that.
Okay.
And, maybe go back a couple of years, 3 years or something like that, just whatever.
We can do that.
But if there's no other, I didn't turn your light off. Is any other committee? Do y'all have committee members? Do y'all have any other questions? If not, I want to thank y'all for the great job y'all are doing with the lottery, and keep it up.
Thank you.
Because the university systems would probably jump out of their skyboxes if y'all didn't. Committee members, this meeting is now adjourned, and y'all have a safe trip home.